Now, British Airways and Kulula.com will take to the skies again this morning after a 5-day precautionary suspension over safety issues. This after the South African Civil Aviation Authority reinstated Comair's air operator certificate, which is suspended indefinitely due to what it said were immediate risks to safety and security. Now, do stay tuned. We are going to be talking to the Civil Aviation Authority a little after 8 this morning, so we'll get more from them. But the grounding of Comair saw a spike in ticket prices of other airlines, which led to the Competition Commission probing price gouging allegations following reports and complaints, with some airlines quoting 5,000 Rand for a single flight ticket from Johannesburg to Cape Town. Sipho Ngwema is the head of communications at the Competition Commission, and he joins us now to talk about this. Sipho, great to have you. Thanks very much for talking to us here on the program.
Good morning, Leanne, and thanks once again for having us on your program.
So perhaps you can start off by telling us about some of the complaints or suspicions that you've had around the possible price gouging following Comair's grounding.
Indeed, and suddenly after the suspension of Comair, meaning that the taking away of seats both from British Airways and Kulula.com, there's been a surge of prices, and we have seen reports of exorbitant amounts of people had to pay for tickets between Johannesburg and Cape Town, between Johannesburg and Durban, and Johannesburg and East London. And suddenly, we also received complaints from passengers saying that the amounts they were paying were extraordinary. And we had to caution the airlines because it seems as though they were cashing on the suspension of Comair, and that means they are putting burden on the hardworking South Africans given the situation that had arisen with regards to Comair. And therefore, they were flirting with breaking the law with regards to law that regulate issues like price gouging. And this is why we have serious concerns, and we are meeting the airlines this morning in order to discuss the conduct that we suspect may be threatening or lessening competition with regards to how the prices have suddenly shot up. And you must remember, we saw this during COVID, where prices of COVID-related material, including PPEs, just shot up, and some of them went up by more than 100%. And this is what we are trying to make sure that it doesn't happen, it must not happen. And if it does happen, if people are breaking the law, we want to act swiftly.
But the reality on the ground is that, you know, it is happening. I'm not sure what. Obviously, the airlines will give you a much a better answer, and they'll tell you it's the systems that automatically calculate, etc., etc., etc. But the reality is that, I mean, the social media has been flooded with people taking screenshots of the price of these tickets. The moment, obviously, they're desperate. So people are not desperate that whether they were stuck in Cape Town and needed to get back to Johannesburg, or vice versa in Durban or wherever, and their flight was cancelled, then they immediately had to quickly find another way to do it. And some people were forking out up to 6,000 Rand for a one-way ticket. Now, I mean, this is criminal. And the thing is, they've got no way of getting that money back, or do they?
Leanne, look, it will depend between them and the airlines, but from our side, with regards to regulation, of course, there are issues of demand and supply, but of course, all of those have to happen within reasonableness. There must be fairness, and also they must take place within the confines of the law. And this is why we want to meet the airlines in order for us to understand exactly what has happened. But we need to protect our hardworking citizens and consumers to make sure that whatever is happening, it's happening within the confines of the law. But our suspicion is that there seem to be some unfairness, there seem to be some unreasonableness, but we get the explanation from the airlines. We did get explanations before from those who were selling products that are related to COVID. And in the end, we had to prosecute some of the companies, and they were found guilty. And we want to ensure this time around that such things do not happen. Our people are already pressed on a number of areas, and given the state of our economy, and we cannot afford greedy tendencies creeping in any sector that are going to suppress the consumer much further.
So can we confirm, I know you're meeting with the airlines, but may we confirm, are you investigating this? Is this something that you have, the task you've undertaken, that you will be investigating these airlines?
For now, we are still in the process of gathering information. This is why we are meeting them. This is why I want to understand exactly what has taken place over the past few days. And that information, we will apply our minds to it and determine whether or not, what kind of action do we take, whether or not we're investigating or we need to take whatever action we need to take. But we want to first sit with the airlines, understand them, get the side of the story, and then from then on, we'll want to take decisions with regards to how these things have panned out and what actions do we need to take.
Yeah, it is so difficult. I mean, I know that they're going to obviously throw the line supply and demand. That's what they're going to do. As a business, I mean, a business, you see an opportunity, you see people are desperate, and then of course you need my help, you pay for it, and that's just the way it is. So people did. I mean, it was there in black and white. I suppose one has to understand that is the side of the consumer. You hear from the business, but that sudden increase, and then suddenly now you go online, there's a sudden decrease in prices. Coincidence?
From where we are sitting, it seems to be beyond the boundaries of coincidence, but we need to get the information from the relevant companies.
Yeah.
But I think you must remember, in the past, we were given the same reasons of demand and supply, but we were able to go to the competition tribunal to demonstrate that this was the margins that these tickets went up. And there is certainly no coincidence. There was no coincidence at the time that people were cashing in unfairly, exploiting consumers, given the emergency that had arisen at the time. And now an emergency had arisen, and it seems as though the tendency and the pattern is the same. But we need to look at the margins, we need to look at the patterns in terms of how these tickets go up and down, and whether or not was there an influence with regards to what had happened to Comair. But at the end of the day, we need to rein in companies. They need to know that South Africa is it's a country of laws, and those laws must be applied, and consumers need to be protected. And this is why we want to engage with them and understand at the end of the day what really happened and what do we need to do as a regulator to make sure that this never happens. If there's any breaking of the law, it should not happen now, it should not happen in the future.
Yeah, I mean, I'm even looking at, I'm just looking at a host of screenshots that that viewers are sending in, and also those that have been circulating of people having a look. And this one really did catch my attention. I mean, if we listen to this, this was the moment that the suspension on the airlines was instituted. The fright of a ticket on Lyft from Johannesburg to Cape Town flew up for one traveller to 6,658 rand. That was a one-way ticket. And then they did a comparison of a flight from Johannesburg to Istanbul, which was 6,059 rand. Now, I mean, this is here, and the Twitter account that this comes from is a gentleman named Saad Salih. So, I mean, they can try explain this away, but I really hope you hold them accountable to this, because this was unacceptable.
Over the past few days, we have seen amounts where, in fact, it would be cheaper to fly to Dubai, it would be cheaper to fly to London than flying to Cape Town. And also the amounts that we've seen on screenshots of people who were buying tickets to Durban and East London from Johannesburg. Those were extraordinary. But of course, we need to hear the side of the story, but it seems as though something fishy had taken place, and this is why we are concerned. Yeah. And this is why we are saying there is a law in South Africa. If we need to protect consumers, we will make sure that we act swiftly, we act decisively, and now we want to meet them and hear exactly what happened. Of course, we understand that in terms of the industry, you have your higher bucket tickets, you have lower bucket tickets, and therefore, because when there's a scramble, people then, the lower bucket tickets would have been bought earlier, but it seems as though the prices are very extraordinary. But let's hear from the airlines, and let's see what evidence do we get and what action do we need to take if we have to take any.
Yeah, so tell us, which airlines exactly will you be meeting with?
I think today we'll be meeting South African Airways and FlySafair. But of course, we are trying to meet other airlines in the next couple of days so that we understand exactly what happens, and then we are able to reach agreements with them in terms of our role, in terms of how they have acted or how they should act under these kinds of circumstances.
Yeah, because I know that, big complaints also directed at Fly Safair. We're actually going to be speaking to them, so that should be an interesting conversation. That'll happen after 8 o'clock this morning, so that we can perhaps understand, maybe listen to that interview as well, and hear their side of the story. But I've seen what they've been saying in interviews, and they're citing it's a computer generated thing, and they don't have any involvement in it, and it just happens. But how do companies get away with this? You're constantly looking into these kind of things, whether it be the amount that we as South Africans pay for COVID tests, which I still believe we're paying too much. We never ever, I know they've been dropped down, but it still is something that I still think we have been taken a ride for. Whether it be the price of bread, whether it be the price of now air tickets. The range is vast. Where are the loopholes in our system? Why do they take advantage, these corporates? Why do they take advantage of us South Africans and get away with it?
Leanne, we are trying to make sure that they don't get away with it. And we accept that businesses must make money, businesses must make profit, and also there are issues of supply and demand. However, I think it is unfair for them to take advantage of an already struggling consumer, but also there are laws in the country, as you correctly said, and they must abide by those laws. So what we are trying to do now is to make sure that the law bites. We demonstrated, talking about the answers that you have been reading from these companies, we got the same answers during COVID. And we're able, for example, you remember at the time, a simple thing like a mask would cost someone over around 100 Rand. And now, I think about 10 of them, you buy them for about 10 Rand. And we're able to fight those fights, and we're able to prove the unreasonableness, we're able to prove the unfairness, we're able to prove cases of price gouging before the competition tribunal. And we are going to do the same if we find the same evidence. But for now, we are collecting preliminary information in order for us to be able to know exactly what we must do. But people always take chances. People always want to make sure they squeeze the consumer. And this is why we have got the regulatory bodies like the Consumer Commission, like the Competition Commission, and a number of others. We are there to protect the consumer. We are there to make sure that the law is applied, and the law is applied fairly and transparently. And this is what we are trying to do right now.
All right. Well, Sipho, we'll stay in touch with you. We'll see how those meetings go and what happens out of it. But just, I know I asked you right up front, but I want to ask this again. So I'm not saying that they are guilty, but if you do decide to investigate and they are declared to have been price fixing in any scenario, does the consumer have any right to claim back funds? Or is this between now the consumer and the service provider that they have to battle that out?
I think in the past, consumer bodies have been able to launch class actions against certain companies that have exploited them. And I think in consultation with their legal representative, they can explore those avenues if it's clear that these companies have broken the law and they have exploited them. For us, in terms of the Competition Act mandate, we want to make sure that if we find that they have breached the law, we are going to ask the Competition Tribunal, if we prosecute them, to impose the maximum penalty, which is 10% of their turnover. This is what the law allows us to do, and this is what we always ask for in extreme cases like this one.
All right, Sipho, thank you very, very much for talking to us. Sipho Ngwema, he is the head of communications at the Competition Commission. So just giving us a bit of a heads up as to what will be happening today. So Competition Commission meeting with SAA and I think it's SA Express, I think that's what they're meeting with at the moment, to kind of speak to them, get their side of the story as to why the tickets were so expensive when we saw the grounding of British Airways and Kulula suddenly go up almost threefold, and we'll get an idea as to whether they are going to in fact investigate those airlines.